If you work near water, you need to protect yourself from the risk of drowning, and commonly that's done by wearing a personal flotation device, often referred to as a PFD. There are two main types to look at and consider, one being a life jacket, which effectively is a deep water defensive system designed just to keep you on the surface and wait for rescue, or a buoyancy aid, which, as the name suggests, is going to be an aid to keep you on the surface, but you'll be more agile and able to move around in the water. Within each type there are many different designs and standards, so it's important that you go back to your hazard assessment to identify what are the main hazards and risks in the water environment you're working in, and then to match the correct PPE to that. Whichever you choose to use, you should look upon your personal flotation device as your seatbelt for when you're working around water. It is important that you understand the manufacturer's recommendations in terms of how to maintain and inspect this equipment. And that is a little bit more complicated if you're using life jackets than buoyancy aids, and particularly if you're using inflatable life jackets. Systems that are packed up and that only provide buoyancy when they're activated by the user or activated as a result of falling into the water. They will then inflate a bladder which will provide the buoyancy to you. That's a mechanical process, and therefore if that fails or doesn't work correctly, you really haven't got any flotation on at all. For the inspection and maintenance is a little bit more complicated for life jackets, and it's very common when we first work with organisations that there are gaps and omissions in the way that they look after and inspect this equipment. All manufacturers will provide you with information when you purchase the equipment, which will instruct you how to fit it, size it and adjust it, how to look after it, maybe in terms of its lifespan as well. So buoyancy aids and life jackets that have solid foam in them typically have a shelf life, and whether you've used the product once or never or 1,000 times, when you get to the end of that shelf life you have to retire and dispose of the equipment. Life jackets, because a lot of the components on them on the inflatable life jackets are serviceable components, tend to go on for many years, provided they are properly maintained. So what does the manufacturer require in terms of its inspection and maintenance? Typically, in a work context, we're talking about an inflatable life jacket, either manually inflatable or automatically inflatable, and all manufacturers, whether it's a life jacket or a buoyancy aid, will advise you to do a pre-use or a pre-wear site inspection, so that you're just having a look at the product to make sure that it's in good condition. The second level of inspection, which really only applies to inflatable life jackets, is a periodic inspection where you would conduct an inflation test of the life jacket to make sure that the bladder that inflates is gas tight and works correctly. Most manufacturers will recommend that you do that once every 3 months as a maximum, but you may be doing that more regularly than that. So if you're working in an engineering or an industrial setting where perhaps there are hot works or sharp edges around, or it's just high use and wear, you may do your inflation test more frequently than that, and typically that would be either once a month or once a week. Either way, that's an inspection that the end user can do if they're trained to do it, and it is very important that you record that inspection on its pure record so that you've got evidence that it's been done. If you don't do that, you are potentially taking a risk that the life jacket will fail on you if ever you need it to inflate. The third level of inspection is the annual inspection, and for this most manufacturers will tell you that you will need to return their life jacket to an approved service centre for them. And they're very easy to find. You can do that via the manufacturer's websites. There are lots of them in the UK, and typically they're going to be in ports around the edge of the coast, because that's where historically life jackets have had the biggest use. So once a year you're going to send your life jacket off to a service centre. They're going to give it for what we like to refer to as an annual MOT. They'll replace any service components on there, update any manufacturer's replacement requirements, inspect the thing, give it a pressure test, repack it, and then send it back to you. It's then good for you to carry on using the life jacket, and you would need to make sure that you updated your pure records that had been serviced. You would need to make sure that you carried on with your 3 monthly or monthly inflation tests. The daily pre-use inspection, you should do that for sure. Some organisations require you to actually fill that inspection out on a form. Quite a lot of organisations just expect you to do it and don't record it anywhere. But certainly the 3 monthly and the annual service centre inspection should be recorded. If you work around the water, we run a number of courses, one-day courses, which you can do. We can come to you, or you can come to us, and we can do it at a water venue close to you, where we can go through all the hazards and background stuff that your team need to know. We can also then take you through how to select, inspect, maintain and fit this equipment, which is highly useful for you. And then we can give you a practical so that your team members actually experience swimming and firing off a life jacket, moving around in the water, and in particular they understand the challenges of getting themselves out of the water wearing a life jacket. That's a one-day course. We do a lot of those each year in the UK. We're probably the biggest supplier of this training because we're in the privileged position of holding the DEFRA national contract and have done for a number of years.